You ever wonder what makes Japanese food so incredibly, deeply delicious? Well, today, we're going to unlock that secret. And trust me, it's the perfect topic for your next language exchange. We are diving headfirst into the amazing world of Japanese fermented foods.
So picture this. A classic Japanese meal is sitting right in front of you. You've got your steaming miso soup, a perfect bowl of rice, some crunchy pickles, and maybe even some natto if you're feeling a little adventurous. They all look so different, right? But believe it or not, they all share one powerful secret. Any guesses? All right, here's our game plan. First, we'll figure out the super thin line between something being spoiled versus something being special. Then, we get to meet Japan's national fungus. And yes, that is a real thing. After that, we'll explore some, let's call them challenging flavors. And then, we're going to get you totally prepped to talk about all of this. We'll wrap it all up with a bit of encouragement at the end. Okay, Section 1, Rot or Riches. So, Japan's climate is famously hot and humid. It's the perfect recipe for things to go bad and fast. But centuries ago, people there figured out how to work with that environment, turning what could have been a total disaster into an incredible culinary art form, just by mastering microbes. So here's where it gets really fascinating. Scientifically speaking, rotting and fermentation, they're basically the same process. The only real difference comes down to one word: control. Rotting is what happens when microbes just go wild. It's uncontrolled, and the result is harmful. But fermentation, well, that's when we become the conductors of the orchestra, guiding the process to create something not just beneficial, but truly delicious. And you know, one of the biggest payoffs from that control is umami. You've probably heard of it. It's often called the fifth taste, right alongside sweet, sour, salty, and bitter. It's that deep, savory, just mouth-watering flavor that makes you close your eyes and go, wow. Fermentation is basically a natural umami factory. It unleashes microbes to break down proteins, creating this incredible depth of flavor. So, if fermentation is this amazing umami factory, you've got to be asking, who's running the factory? Well, in our next section, we are going to meet the master ingredient, the single most important microbe in the entire Japanese kitchen. Just take a second and let this statement sink in. It is absolutely not an exaggeration. Without koji, there is no Japanese cuisine. So what in the world is this powerhouse? This, right here, is koji. It's a type of mold, and it's so fundamental to the culture that it is officially Japan's national fungus. I mean, how cool is that? Just think about the absolute cornerstones of Japanese flavor. Soy sauce, miso, sake, mirin, almost all of them owe their existence to this one special mold. So how does the magic happen? It's actually a beautifully simple process. First, you grow the koji mold on some steamed grains, like rice or soybeans. Next, its super powerful enzymes wake up and get to work. They're like these tiny little chefs, breaking down complex starches into sugars and proteins into amino acids. And then, bam! From all that hard work, these incredibly complex, savory, umami-packed flavors are born. All right, let's dive into the really juicy stuff. Section 3 is all about an acquired taste. We're going to look at a couple of fermented foods that are famous and maybe a little infamous for being, well, a little bit out there. And first up, of course, is the legend itself, natto. This is one of those foods that draws a hard line in the sand. People either absolutely love it and see it as a superfood, or they approach it like it's a ticking time bomb. There is pretty much zero middle ground here. So, what even is it? At its core, it's just fermented soybeans. But wow, the result has this really strong, pungent smell. And then there's the texture. It's famously sticky and stringy, a texture the Japanese perfectly describe as neba-neba. But here's the trade-off. For all that intensity, it is an absolute nutritional powerhouse, packed with things like nattokinase for your blood and vitamin K2 for your bones. It's a superfood through and through. So, I have to ask the big question. Are you brave enough to give it a shot? It's a true rite of passage for anyone exploring Japanese food. Next up, let's talk about something a little more charming: nukazuke pickles. And honestly, the best way to think about how these are made is to imagine you have a pet that lives in your refrigerator. See, this pet is called a nukadoko. It's a living bed of fermented rice bran, just teeming with live cultures. You bury your vegetables in it, and they turn into amazing pickles. But because it's a living ecosystem, you have to care for it. You have to mix it by hand every single day to keep it healthy. It's so special that some families pass their nukadoko down for generations, just like a priceless family heirloom. Okay,
So you're basically an expert now. Let's get you ready to show off what you know. Section 4 is all about turning this knowledge into a really great conversation with your language partners or any Japanese-speaking friends.
Here's a fantastic icebreaker, the Stinky Food Challenge. This is such a great way to connect with someone. You can just ask, does your country have a famously smelly but delicious food, kind of like natto? It totally opens the door to talking about everything from strong cheese to durian. Every culture has one.
All right, starter number 2 digs into modern trends. Ask them if fermented foods are popular right now. You know, like how kombucha is huge in some places, or are they seen more as old-fashioned, something that only grandparents eat? This tells you so much about current culture. And for our third one, let's connect to history. Ask about the traditional foods their grandparents' generation used to make. I mean, before refrigerators, every single culture had its own brilliant ways to make food last, and fermentation was very often the key.
And to make things super easy for you, here are the absolute must-know words for the conversation. You've got fermentation, or hakko, acquired taste, the perfect phrase for natto, neba to describe that one-of-a-kind texture, and gut health, which is a huge reason these foods are making a comeback. Think of this slide as your personal cheat sheet.
Okay, let's bring it all home with our last section, a final encouragement. Because at the end of the day, this isn't just about food. It's about the whole adventure of learning.
And this is really the main takeaway. Trying a food that seems a little weird to you is a lot like trying to say a new word that feels awkward in your mouth. Both can be a challenge, sure, but every single one is a step forward in this amazing adventure. So be brave, stay curious, and most importantly, just keep the conversation going. Thanks for hanging out with me today.